Okay, the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we've got the IP security feature of IIS installed. Now I'm using Windows 7 here for this tutorial, but the process is the same for Windows Server. You will just have a slightly different interface, but you'll need to go into the Roles Manager on Windows Server and add this Windows feature into IIS. You need the IP security, so you need to make sure that's enabled and make sure it's installed. I'm going to pause this for a couple of minutes while this installs so you don't have to watch it. Okay, so that component has now been installed. So we're now going to go and have a look in IIS, and we're going to refresh this. You can see the IP and Security Manager isn't there at the moment, and it doesn't appear after refreshing, so I'm going to have to close down my IIS Manager and start it again in order for that feature to show up. Now we can see it there, IP address and domain restrictions. So I've now got that feature. If I go into any individual website, I can see it's in there as well now. Okay, now the first step that we want to do is we want to block globally all access to the Railo server admin. We do this by going to the root of the IIS configuration, and we're going to go into the request filtering. Okay, and here we're going to deny a specific sequence, which in this case I'm going to deny the Railo context admin server.cfm. Put that in there. Okay, that is now denied. If I now go back to my browser and try and reload this page, you'll see it's now not allowing me access. This will be applied across your entire server. Any website that tries to load that particular page, it will fail. If I just go and have a look in admin.cfm instead, now I can get into the web administrator, so that's fine. So your individual websites will still be able to get into their web admins, they just won't be able to get into your server admin. So you've globally blocked access to that now. But the obvious problem you're going to get is, how do you get access to your server admin? Well, what you need to do is you need to remove that restriction on one individual website that you're going to use to manage your Railo server. So in this case, I'm going to go into my default website, I'm going to go into my request filtering, and I'm now going to remove that filter that I added. Okay, so this website only is now allowed to access the server admin, which in fact is my local host because it's the default website. So if I reset that, you can now see it's now working. But if I go back, just to prove it, if I go back up to the root level, have a look in request filtering, there it's still there, blocking access to all the other websites. Now we need to do some additional lockdown here in the default website, because we don't want everyone to be able to access the server admin from this website. So we need to now lock it down by IP address, which is why we installed the IP address and domain restrictions module. So what we can do now is we can go into here. First you need to edit the feature settings, and you need to set the default to deny, so that you're not going to allow access to this website by default. It's blocked to all IP addresses. You can do this on an individual folder level if you prefer, but I'm going to do it to the whole website. I'm now going to add an allow entry. So I'm going to say, first thing I'm going to allow is localhost. Before we do this, just let me prove to you that that doesn't work. If I try and go into it now, you can see it's access forbidden. The IP address from which you are browsing is not permitted. So I've proved that that's not allowing me to go in. I'm now going to add an allow entry, 127.0.0.1 localhost. I've now allowed the localhost. If I go back and reload again, as you can see, it's now working. Now what you would obviously do here is, if you only want to allow access to the Railo server admin from the server itself, then that entry by itself would be sufficient. However, let's say that you want to allow access from your office. You would add the IP address for your office as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever the IP address for your office is. If you have a VPN server, which is my recommended course of action, is you allow the IP address of your VPN server. This will allow any of your staff, your support staff, or you yourself to connect from anywhere, from home or from the office, via your VPN server. So if the IP address of my VPN server was 1234, by adding that in, that would give me global access. Okay, and that is how to lock down your Railo admin. Now, if you want to take this one step further and also restrict access to the Railo web admin as well, then that's obviously quite simple. If you want to deny access globally to the entire server, you would just go and edit your request filter at the root level and change it to the entire Railo context folder, as I've already done here, just as an example. This will obviously block access to obviously the Railo server admin and the web admin. Now I'll switch it back to how it was originally. Put the server admin URL in. Okay, so by default I'm denying access to the server admin, but I'm allowing all websites access to their web admin, which obviously you're going to do if you're on a multi-host server and if you've got multiple clients with multiple sites. They're all going to want to have access to their web admins by default. So what you're then going to want to do is you're going to want to go in and restrict access to each individual site, or tell your customers how to do so, so that only they can access their web admins. This is straightforward. If you go in and you edit the web.config file of each individual website, you just need to add this location section at the bottom of the system.webserver section. This is restricting access to the Railo context path again for your individual clients, and you're adding a security section in which is going to override IP security at the global level. We're going to clear any previous restrictions, and then we're going to add in the IP addresses that we want to allow. Now, you only need to add in the IP addresses for your customers, or give them the instructions to do it themselves. If you want to get into their web admin as well, then you're at least going to need to add in the local host so that you can access it from the server, plus any other IP addresses you want to access it from. Okay, and that's all you need to do by adding these entries in and the following, the previous instructions. You've now locked down your Railo server admin so that no one can access it apart from you, and you've locked down your Railo web admin so that only each individual client can access it using their own IP address.